Donald Trump has proved time and time again how much crow he likes to eat. That's right, our de facto president on Wednesday, after the sudden assassination of Charlie Kirk, decided to blame his murder on the left. He claimed that it was the liberals' fault, and the liberals were spreading, calling Charlie a racist and a bigot and a Nazi and wham, blah, blah, blah. Of course he was. Well, guess what? Donald Trump, proving to the world how stupid he is. Well, they do have a suspect in custody in regards to Kirk's murder, and it's a Republican. 22-year-old Republican male from Utah. White male. Who was so obsessed with Trump that he even dressed like him at during Halloween. His whole family are Trump supporters. And so was the guy who tried to assassinate Trump at his rally in Pennsylvania last year. They're all Trump supporters, folks. And the question is, it's so funny how, one of the terms that racist people love to use every time they turn on the news and they see, news story about a black person who shoots another black person, they'll use N-word, shooting N-word. And yet, you look at the conservatives and the Republicans, they're a hell of a lot more violent than black people are. And it's like, what the fuck are you, what's wrong with you? Why do you act like this? Are you that goddamn stupid? But yeah, that's the way Donald Trump is. He blames everybody. He blames the wrong people for everything. Because that is what Donald does. He did it, shortly after the plane crash in Washington, D.C. He's claimed it was DEI that caused the plane crash. And Biden. It was Biden. And when Melissa Hortman was assassinated at her house in not Pennsylvania, but Minnesota. She was the Speaker of the House in that state. Melissa Hortman was murdered by a Republican. They're evil. They're traitors. And no, the president thinks they're good people. Look at January 6th. All the people who went to jail on January 6th. They're good people to Trump. Including the one, it's like that one woman who partaked in that. Yeah, let's remember what happened to her. She got like a full honorable funeral. It's like, what the hell is wrong with people? Well, that's Trump for you, because, hey, he was supposed to, give us no taxes on overtime or tips. And look at what's going on now, folks. Factories are closing. A lot of them are closing in West Michigan, where I'm from. The Kellogg Corporation, WK Kellogg Company, they make the cereals that you and I eat. They were just bought out by a candy maker in, I think it was somewhere in Europe, Ferrero Rocher, or whatever the hell Ferraro, whatever the hell their names is. filmmakers here in West Michigan are hurting. They're going out of business. Herman Miller going out of business. They put the blame on the fact that nobody's buying a new home these days. And hey, no new home is nice. No new home, folks, is perfect without a clock. And nobody's buying them. The sad truth is, because of Trump, companies are starting to, there have been a lot of merger announcements in the media. Nexstar here in Grand Rapids, they own Wood TV 8, they own WOTV, ABC 41 down in Battle Creek, and then there's another company called Tegna. They own the other ABC affiliate here in Grand Rapids, which is WZZM 13. They're in the middle of a merger, and guess what's going to happen? One news department here in Grand Rapids, one of the two news departments will close. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 13's, because they're dead last. If they're not dead last in the ratings, they're close to it. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not even a huge fan of 13. And I know some people, but here's the problem. If you get pissed off at one media station in town because, they don't report on what you want them to report on, you always turn to another station. But when you got fewer choices for news, that's the situation sometimes. After this merger happens, and if one of the two news departments merges or closes or whatever, this is what's going to happen, folks. You're going to have only 3 choices for news in West Michigan. You got your pick, folks. You're going to be choosing from probably Channel 8 or Channel 17 if you're in Grand Rapids, or Channel 3 down in Kalamazoo, which is owned by Sinclair, unfortunately. But I've heard another rumor that they might actually sell. I hope they do. I hate Sinclair. Some of the stations they have, including 7 and 4. I'm not going to lie to you. I think 7 and 4 up in Traverse City actually has a better product than 9 and 10 does these days. 9 and 10, they moved into this cramped new studio in downtown Traverse City, and, it's like a lot of times if I watch 9 and 10 News, they don't even start with the local news. They start with national headlines because, they have such a lax news department these days. It's like, Jesus Christ, what the hell happened? It's amazing how they had this really beautiful new studio in Calac, and then they shut that bitch down, and then they moved to, they decided to make the full move to Traverse City. Sorry, folks. I'm driving and there's assholes everywhere. That's probably there was a horn honking behind me a while back. But anyway, so moving forward, now there's another big media merger in the works, and it looks like the company that just bought Paramount, which is Skydance, which is controlled by the Ellison family, which owns Oracle. Now, this was big headlines a few days ago. Larry Ellison, who started Oracle, he was briefly the wealthiest man on earth, overtaking Elon Musk very briefly. And Elon, as a matter of fact, so the story is Skydance is actually controlled mostly by his son. And so, yes, a billionaire's son is now the owner of Paramount Pictures and CBS and all these other networks and whatever. And anyway, what happened was, there was this big brouhaha because Paramount had to pay $16 million to Donald Trump because they made him upset because of a 60-minute story where they talked with Kamala Harris. And they did a little bit of Trump trashing, and Kamala was talking about how Trump was going to destroy the economy and this, that, and everything else. And what happened was it was a defamation lawsuit that he filed because he's a little crybaby who needs to always get his way. So what happens is Donny Boy got his $16 million. The money went to most of the money went to help his new library. And I guess it'll open as soon as he leaves the presidency, if he leaves the presidency. So what's going on is Donald got his money. He's happy now. And because he's happy, he allowed this merger to go on. And, what happened was, so now Skydance is reportedly in talks to purchase, by the way, I should tell you this beforehand. Skydance, when they purchased Paramount, they announced that, they made a deal with Trump, and that deal was that they will have like an editorial board that will make sure that every story they do will be, equal. Meaning that it will be, some stories will continue to be on the left, but they need to please the right too. And it's like, no, that's not how you do news. You need to be factual, not kiss the right's ass. And that kind of ruined CBS. But here's something else that's scary. Skydance is now in discussion, is now considering buying out Warner Brothers Discovery. So, here's the story. Warner Brothers, the film studio, has been bought and sold multiple times in the last 60 years or so. Of course, Warner Brothers was founded by these four brothers from Poland. And then, they and their family controlled the studio for decades. And then they died. And then the studio was actually sold, believe it or not, to a company that owned parking lots. It was called the Kinney Corporation. And I believe Kinney may have been partially owned by the mob. So, and for a while they merged with another studio called Seven Arts, based off Canada. So, for a while it was known as Warner Brothers Seven Arts. So anyway, Kinney realized that Warner Brothers was the biggest business they owned, so they renamed the company Warner Communications. Warner Communications in 1989 merged with another company called Time Magazine. Yeah, Time Magazine. So it became Time Warner for a while. And Time Warner was the company's name up until 2000 or so. Then they had this $150 billion merger with AOL. So it became AOL Time Warner for a while. AOL was spun off. Then it went back to being Time Warner, and then Time Magazine was spun off, and it simply became Warner Media. And in the process, Warner Media was then sold to AT&T. Well, AT&T spun off Warner Brothers, Warner Media, and then they merged with the Discovery Channel, and it became Warner Brothers Discovery. So the assets, of course, include the Warner Brothers studio, HBO, Cinemax, Looney Tunes, TBS, TNT, True TV, of course, the Warner Brothers Film Library, which also includes the pre-1986 MGM library, so they own The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind and all these beloved movies from yesteryear. And of course, a lot of it came from Ted Turner as well. And anyway, the rest of the story, and of course, there's the Discovery Channel, which is, the Discovery Channel, TLC, Animal Planet. And so anyway, these two companies are merging together. They merged together, but now they were in discussion of splitting it apart again. So Discovery would have all the cable channels, while Warner Brothers would retain the film studio, and, stuff like that. But now, it looks like Skydance wants to buy Warner Brothers Discovery and put it under the... So that's right. Warner Brothers may be owned... Warner Brothers and Paramount might be in the same wheelhouse here. Which, and don't get me wrong, film studios have merged over the years. I mean, many of the biggest studios in Hollywood came to be because of mergers, like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. They were 3 separate companies. Paramount Pictures was actually, I think, 2 or 3 different companies. Same with Universal Pictures, and back in the 80s, MGM merged with United Artists, so it became MGM UA. But point being, the merger between... So this is what will probably happen. They want all the cable networks, so that means Skydance will now not just own CBS, they're going to own CNN. That's right. So now, CBS and CNN, if this merger happens, this will also ruin the integrity of the media. And I understand. Because guess what, folks? I had an uncle that worked for Time Warner. He worked in the record division for 25 years. He was a great father to his children. He had 3 kids. He'd take them, he got them backstage passes to concerts. His kids got to meet the biggest rock stars on the face of the earth. And, my cousin would talk to me about smoking pot with with some of the bands when he was like 16, 17 years old, and drinking and just being cool. I mean, he had the life I wanted growing up. I mean, he had a mother and father that, stayed together no matter what. And, they were always busy doing shit. And here I was stuck in northern Michigan, being bored to tears because I was, too far from doing anything fun. And my dad disencouraged me to spend my money. Not only that, it's like too many times I think about the shit that I wish I did as a teenager but never got to do because my parents forced me to stay up there and do nothing. And I wasn't popular in school. I tried to be friends with people and they disowned me, and I can go on and on. But what happened was my uncle lost his job. Napster, unfortunately, was a huge factor because, record sales went down the shitter. But the merger between Time Warner and AOL really killed him. And guess what he ended up having to do? He ended up having to work at Sam's Club. He went to he ended up having to work at Sam's Club because he didn't view himself as very hireable, unfortunately. He had his resume, he actually worked as a salesman at WNIC in Detroit for a while, the local adult contemporary station. And he he could not cut the mustard there, unfortunately, because that's another problem. So, anyway, I am a little, when mergers happen, people lose jobs. And that's what Donald Trump wants. Mergers to happen so companies get bigger and bigger for the investors while you and I suffer. And, that's the problem, folks. I mean, there's been, the terrorists are going to kill us all financially. And, there's some idiots out there who will cry, oh, it's all going to trickle down. Oh, we're all going to be wealthy in the end. No, that's not how trickle-down economics work. It doesn't work, period, end of story. If trickle-down economics worked, folks, I would not have to wait 10 years for a raise, when I first started at my job. Okay? I would probably be much happier now than what I am now. But that's the problem, folks. Don't look at me. I never voted Republican in my life. And meanwhile, Donald Trump is out there strutting like a little peacock. So last night, Donald was at the Yankee game in New York City. He was there for 9/11, and doing his, because basically he was just, saying that he supported 9/11 and all that crap. And so anyway, he was at the stadium, and he goes into the locker room, meets the Yankees, and he does a photo op with them. And I would imagine that every single player had to be in the picture and smiling that they were right next to the President of the United States. But the sad truth was, everyone was smiling and happy, and there were no reports of players saying hell no to the photo op. So let me tell you what happened. I was listening to MeidasTouch this morning, and Ben Meiselas opened a can of whoop ass on the Yankees. Ben Meiselas was Colin Kaepernick's lawyer. That's how he got all the money to do this show. And, he's also the owner of Los Angeles Magazine, by the way. Or co-owner, I should say. So the story with Ben Meiselas is that, of course, he hosts the show with his two brothers, Brent and Jordy. And what happened was Ben got really, he basically called the Yankees sellouts. Because Colin, stood up by bending down and telling our country, fuck you, for all you've done for black people. By doing what you did to George Floyd and doing what you've done to other black people who were innocent. This country has had a long, horrible history of judging people because they have a dark skin color. And Donald Trump, and the sad truth is, a lot of these Yankees, they were Hispanic. And they probably had relatives who were pushed around by ICE and profiled. But these people, they're multimillionaires. They don't give a fuck. And another thing that bothers me too is I have a hunch that the Yankees were designed to win yesterday's game. So let me tell you what happened. On Tuesday's game, Now, the Yankees were playing against the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers opened the can of whoop ass on them on Tuesday, 12-2, including a giant blast of a home run in the 7th inning. And then on Wednesday, it was 11-1. But on Thursday's game, it was 9-3. So the story was, the starting pitcher for Detroit on Tuesday's game was Casey Mize. Decent pitcher. He's got an overall winning record. On Wednesday's game, unfortunately, they had to settle on Wednesday's game on Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty has been pretty hit or miss this season. But he was a winner. He only allowed one hit, one run. Good for him. But unfortunately for yesterday's game, they were like, yeah, let's just go do a bullpen day. Let's just go into the bullpen. And Detroit's bullpen has been kind of meh. Always has been. And so what happened is, it was 9-3. And that's my theory. Maybe I don't know if it was an AJ Hinch decision. I don't know if this was a team decision or a Major League Baseball decision to basically give the game to the Yanks. Because, hey, Donald had to watch. Look at Donald. He has to win all of his games in golf. He's been caught cheating. He's been caught, running. His people keep putting the balls close to the hole so he can just putter in. He's always a winner because he always has to win. And if Donald Trump is at a Yankees game, the Yankees better win because he's the president, and the president only wants winners. Hey, the economy, even though it's going downhill, he's got people coming to him and saying, "Oh, the economy." Oh, yeah. If anybody tells Trump that the economy is bad, guess what's going to happen? They get fired. But if these people tell Trump that, everything's hunky-dory, yeah, we have a little problem here, but it will be, we know that in the next quarter, things will improve. Pigs will fly. The only good news I can tell you about the Tigers are, they have a better record than the Yankees. And, of course, tonight they're playing against Miami. And the Marlins have been kind of a come-see, come-saw team. Yeah, this year they are 68-79. So they're in the shitter. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. Yeah, the Marlins have always been... it's like they won that... And what's so funny was they won that World Series that one year. They were the only team in baseball to win a World Series one year and then be last place the next year. And the big reason why was because they had such a shitty owner, H. Wayne Huizenga. Remember him? He was the guy who made Blockbuster. He bought Blockbuster Video and made them into a household name. And that's how he made his money. Blockbuster Video, he owned Waste Management. He owned all these little companies here and there, and he was worth like $3 billion, which was he was still a billionaire back in the day. Now, H. Wayne Huizenga was a total asshole. In part because Blockbuster would not rent out porno movies. They were totally against X-rated films because Wayne was ultra conservative. And anyway, the only good thing I can tell you about Wayne Huizenga is that, number one, he's dead. And number two, so is Blockbuster Video. They went out of business many years ago. And of course, nobody rents videos anymore. They stream. But you know, folks, that's what you get with Trump. More violence, more bigotry, more stupidity, less, dependable media to tell you the truth, less companies to work for. More companies are merging or going out of business because of the tariffs. Things are only going to get worse from here on out, folks. Mark my words. And unfortunately, the person who was murdered, as I said yesterday, and I'll repeat it to you again, Charlie Kirk killed Charlie Kirk. He promoted violence and bigotry. He was a hateful man. He won't, yes, a lot of people will miss him. But, and I know some people in the last couple of days, they were showing good sportsmanship and saying that they send their thoughts and prayers to Charlie's family and his wife, and, the fact that she now has 2 baby daughters that, will never see their dad ever again. But I don't give a fuck. Those kids were better off with no dad than being with a total loser like Charlie. Because that's who he was. A total fucking loser who lied, who sucked up to Trump by lying for him, and called himself a Christian, even though he was, lying is prohibited in the Bible. Oh, so is being gay. Yeah. And how many times have you been to Red Lobster, dude? Because the same verse in the Bible that you quote from about no men sleeping with men, it's in the same verse as going to eating seafood and going to having sex with a girl on her period. Or we can go on and on. Truth be told, I know that people cry about political violence and how evil it is, and the right is in charge of it. Even, and what's amazing is a lot of the conservatives who get shot at or murdered, they are shot by their fellow conservatives. That's all it is, folks. Anyway, enough of my blabbing. I'm hoping that Trump's never gonna get it. He's just a sad, sick, old man, and I do believe that the end might be near for him. I think he's in cognitive decline. He's got that crap on his hands, and a lot of doctors are saying that, and MeidasTouch even said that he might have had a stroke because he had a stroke face, where part of his, it looks like he's happy and frowning at the same time. Maybe he had he's probably had a couple of mini strokes. Who knows? But all I can say, folks, is if Donald Trump dies, I don't have my sympathies. And I really didn't have much in the way of sympathy either for Charlie Kirk. But all I can say is, Barnum said it best. There's one born every minute. And I'm pretty sure Salem will find another douchebag to fill his shoes. Alright, folks. I'm gone. I'm out of here. Good day and good luck. I'm King Chuck, signing off. Have a good weekend, everyone.